Hi, friends, it's Isaac again, and today's topic is the history of our identity. Also, as you can see, I got a haircut. I buzzed it down to 3/4 inch because the mohawk was getting kind of. I was swimming in chlorine water, and so it got the color faded, and it was kind of gross, and it was just stiff, and now it's short and soft, and you can still see the red and the yellow, and not really, but it's there a little bit. And now it's soft and fuzzy again, so I like it. Okay, so identity and its development. I was pretty androgynous as a kid from the time I was about 8 to 14, and even before then. And then when I was 14, I went to high school, and so I tried to be more feminine because I wanted to fit in, at least a little, but that didn't really work because I didn't fit in anyway. But my identity really started forming into something I had words to talk about when I was a junior in high school, which was about 2 years ago. It mostly started when I read the book Parrotfish by Ellen Whitlinger. It's a book about a trans guy, and I'd read it twice before that. But only after reading it the third time did I actually start thinking about my gender. Um, and at that point, I was already sort of identifying as a lesbian, sort of, I guess. Um, but yeah, um, and it wasn't just like a bolt of lightning hit or something, and I realized I was trans. It was more like it just started misting a little, and then drizzling, and then finally raining a little bit, and then I sort of figured it out. But it was definitely a really slow process. But in this book, Parrotfish, there's this really, really great metaphor about gender I like. And it's not perfect, but it will work. And it describes the gender spectrum as a football field, with like the most manly person on one end of the football field and the most feminine person on the other end of the football field, and then everybody else is sort of like sprinkled in between. Um, and depending on like how masculinely or feminine they identify. Um, so uh, at this point, right after I read the book, I'm like, okay, well, I think I sort of identify like on the 50-yard line, so like equally in between man or woman. Um, and as the months passed after this, that changed. I started identifying as more masculine at some points, and other points more closer to neutral. Um, and I had discussions with my boyfriend about gender, and I did a lot of reading about trans things, and a lot of reading by trans masculine people to kind of like see how that fit. Um, and I did a lot of my own writing, sort of to figure things out. Um, and so right now, it's developed to the point where I identify as like off the gender football field and like in the crowd somewhere. I don't know how you'd say agender, but that's kind of how I identify. But since like I'm at a football game and that's how the world sort of works, I kind of have to pick one. And since if I'm going to pick one, I would like to be seen as someone on like the more masculine half of the football field. Um, so that's why I'm transitioning to be more male. Um, yeah, so I hope that makes sense. Um, and that's pretty much it, I think. I just want to stress that it wasn't just like all of a sudden, bam. It was something that was like I was subconsciously thinking about since the time I was like a little kid, like 8 or something. And I just didn't have like the words to describe it until I was 16 or later. And even then, when I learned what being trans was, it wasn't just like suddenly I realized I was trans. I didn't even, you know, identify as trans for another 6 months at least. So it's just sort of like one big, long, torturous process that I'm still not really done with. Um, but yeah, identity. And onto the weekly update. I went and visited my mom's family last week after I got back from Philadelphia. I had like 18 hours at home, so that was not enough time. But Philadelphia was good, or Tennessee, where my mom's family lives. It was really good. Um, but I'm glad I'm home. It's nice to be home in my own room and bed and things. Um, and that family and my mom's family, they're huge, but and very religious. Well, most of them are very Catholic, but even still, a lot of them are really supportive, even if they don't really understand. Like they all call me my preferred name, and I mean, no one really except a couple of my awesome cousins and a few of my aunts and uncles, um, use the right pronouns, but I mean, whatever. And I mean that part it kind of sucks because I know none of them think me as a guy, no matter what they call me. So even if they call me my preferred name, I know they don't really think of me as a guy. And I know that will never really change, and so that's really hard for me. Um, which is why it was sort of getting to me by the end of the trip. But I did survive the trip, and I had fun swimming and playing soccer and hanging out with my cousins and stuff like that. And I've also been on T for 4 months now, so that's cool. And that's all for this week. So hang in there, fluffy penguins, and I will be back next week. All right. Bye.